package, my bowl of tea spilled. I mean, I had told myself, stop. I mean, I had just planned, I'm going to stop and put myself in a really clear place so that God can speak through me, and I'm not here in the way. So, so the tea spilled, and I went, oops. And then I started to clean up the spill, and then I looked at what the spill looked like, and then Latifa will show you what it looked like. And in the package, which I subsequently opened, there was a bell that was sent to me. It was so beautiful. This this
Yeah.
bill. I mean, look at that. It's so exquisite. And then in the package was this tea stuff that was so beautiful, sent by Karima Foreman, who may or not be back today, but she was here a little while ago. Anyway, I just felt so wonderful about the fact that these accidents happen, and then you get to do some kind of thing about it. So I immediately wrote Latifa. It was 5 minutes before I came on this, we all came on the screen. So I'll play you the bell, and then we'll just sit. I think I got my message across about love, is that basically we must find a way to make love come in rapidly again. And you know how somebody else told me today that the way that Virginia's for Lovers came in, it was at the end of the 60s, and it was Mr. and Mrs. Loving, who went to the Supreme Court to make it possible for Black people to marry Black people. In 1969? I mean, some of us were alive in 1969. It wasn't very long ago. I mean, I know it looks like long ago to you, those of you who are young, but not to me. Anyway, I hope that so we'll sit with this beautiful image before us of this really refined finishing of all kinds of materials. And then this inspirational message from this castle message of where we are. We're in our own castle. Feel your own castle within yourself. So place yourself in your belly now, the deep womb belly. The womb rooted belly. Just tighten the genitals just a little bit and let the energy come up. Let it come up to your heart. And as you breathe in, as we breathe in, let's fill our heart with peace, love, light, caring. Feel the residual energy of this interference that we've had, knowing that it's happening all over the world and has been since we began as humans, and before that as whatever form we were in, all the way back. Consciousness is completely capable of growing up, and we carry it with us, and we have the capacity to become conscious. And love is probably the most direct route of being able to receive it and believe it when it comes our way, and to give it when we try to give it out. Not as a social gesture, but as a deep soul longing for everyone to feel loved and respected. That it's our birthright. The creation is respected and loved by the creation itself, and we can tap into it. Simply breathing in and breathing out. And as we come out of it, let's not come out of it. Let's not think that there's anything between our meditations and our peace and our calm and our lives. And the times when I've allowed myself to just relax into life, I've found that it goes on in the same way and I do the same things, but I react less and I have to use much less energy. And we can all do this. It's harder for some of us because we have more traumas in our past or more triggers in our being. We haven't lived as long as I have, and we probably haven't practiced as much as I have. Just sitting, not, I mean, you can call it meditation, but really you're just sitting, looking for calm abiding. And after you get calm abiding so it's stable, then you're looking for insights into all your little demons who pop up endlessly, whether they're stimulated inside or outside. But everyone can do it. You just have to want to enough to give up the distractions or to join wholeheartedly in the distractions with an eye to getting to understand what life is about. Because as far as I know, the only purpose in life is living and truly living to the fullest extent in love with life, in love with your hands, your feet, your body, your wonderful, complete body, in love with our friends, even in love with our parents who are probably not that much smarter than we are. And all the people who loved us as we were growing up. And then the ones who didn't, who taught us what to watch out for, how to react in the best way we could. And then let's love our beds with their comforters and their pillows. And how nice they are to us. And the sun that rises in the morning, sets. And the deeper layer where it's the earth turning around to do its magic with the sun, showing us the light and the dark. Okay, I guess we have to go to the business at hand, which is the history of my life. Latifah is my boss.
I'm so honored. Thank you, Asha. So, a little update. I've been busily trying to send messages out to people. Some have gotten them, some haven't. So, if anybody, please, I really want to encourage people not to share this openly on Facebook, the Zoom link. And unless it's like a private group, like a Sufi group or something, that's fine. But okay, on to the business at hand. And I love that the meditation started out with this idea of a mistake, Asha. You know, you have been my tea sensei for many years, and you constantly remind me that there's beauty in the little the tea in the natsume, even though it collapses, which it's not supposed to. And it really, I really appreciate the permission to not have to be perfect. So thank you for the reminder. Yeah.
Yes, well, there's not only the question to ask, what is loving? What is a lover? Is it really restricted to making babies? Or is there a subtle body that loves, and then there a spiritual body of the soul that opens up so much that we can really um, be in love. Let's be in love. It's right here, the whole space. And
Thank you.
space connects us, it doesn't separate us, right? I mean, feel the space between us. All over the United States, we're making space. I mean, I see several friends from California. Oh, here's Karima, who
Oh, good.
did you? Thank you. That was the easiest thank you note I ever had to make. So, okay.
So I thought what we could do, and I'm feeling into if it still makes sense to go here, but to continue where we left off from last time. And last time, what I did was I read from, here's this beautiful retreat book that Asha has made, and some of you may have seen. And there's some writing that Asha did, and it's called 40 Days Alone, a Visual Chronicle. So we started reading from that last time, and I thought I'd read a little bit more and then ask some more questions about the next period in Asha's life. So from Asha's 40-day retreat book. A 40-day retreat I did in the winter of 1989 in a 10 by 12 cabin in the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains near Charlottesville, Virginia. No electricity, no running water, and a 30-minute walk to any people. I knew from my experience that my legs could not get up. Now, this is after she had been sitting. My legs could not get up without my conscious permission, and that my mind could wander for long stretches without my being aware or alert to it. Therefore, I was grateful when the abbot of the monastery, Bhante Gunurantana, I can never say that correctly, at the Bhavana Society in West Virginia, gave me a seat in their meditation room and instructions when I requested. My retreat was delayed when my mother, then 81 years old, called to ask me if she would die if she took Dalmane for sleep while she was short of breath. I was in Virginia and she was in San Francisco. I interpreted the question and the sound of her rapid breathing as a call for help. I contacted the infirmary of the Life Care Center where she lived, excuse me, as well as my sister who lived nearby. I left the next day to join her until her death from lymphoma a month and a half later. Sitting in the room with her each day was a prize for one of 4 children who never had enough of her, and because of my quiet attempts to be mindful and my wish to slow down all my own systems, the combination of the 2 of us was extremely peaceful. The fact that I was a nurse and I had started a hospice in Charlottesville was reassuring to her, as it meant I was well acquainted with death and dying. So that's the next installment. Asha, is there anything you want to respond to from that? I thought we'd go on in your timeline, but before we do that, is there anything you want to say? Anything that brings up?
Well, there are certain triggers that happen when something that I was never nice enough to my mother, and hearing that, I realized, well, that was nice, but I never really grieved because I have always accepted death. But we read that, and then I miss her, so I'm kind of weeping a little bit here.
Yeah.
I'm down in my belly with that kind of rich feeling about how much we love certain people, and my mother was certainly a deeply, deeply lovable person. That's what that did to me.
Will you say more about your mother?
My mother was the daughter of the Secretary of War under Ulysses Grant, who was kind of a criminal and was the reason that that was her grandfather. I'm sorry, but it was her grandfather, and it meant something because her mother was the daughter of that person, who then married some kind of financier. But her mother was a glamour lady, a very, very hilarious grammar lady who actually taught her Pekingese to pee on the Russian embassy lawn, so they didn't want to let her go into any of the when we recognized Russia after the Second World War. She wasn't invited to the welcoming for the ambassador because somebody had found out, because she was a friend of a journalist who'd written about it. So she went. I want you to know what it was like in this year that she did this, when Gromyko was invited in. She wrapped up a clock that ticked, wrapped it in newspaper in her purse, because all the dowagers in Washington said she was acceptable and they didn't have to worry. So she was invited when she complained to them. And she went through the receiving line with this clock wrapped up in a newspaper in her purse. And when she got to him, she said, Mr. I think it was Gorbachev. I can't remember which name it was. But she got there with her purse in hand, and she shook his hand and held her purse up with this ticking clock. Then took the clock out and showed it to him. And she said, and this is a time bomb. And he laughed and she laughed. Now, imagine that today. And that's what I'm saying about love. I'm sure my grandmother did not agree with everything that he stood for, right? I mean, Stalin was still in power. Her friends that she had grown up with traveling around the world had been killed by Stalin. This was somebody who had been chosen by Stalin. But the love that was coming through, through humor, was allowed. Now, we know at this point that nobody even trusts anybody in the government. I mean, the government can't take that kind of a risk anymore. So my mother was the daughter of that woman. But she was very sensitive. And anyway, her mother was not, a little bit wilder. one might say even remarkably so in that time and in her status. And so sh the mom fell in love with somebody and divorced. So both of my parents had been divorced in in 1906. I mean, their parents, all four grandparents were divorced. A couple of them a couple of times. So, and not only that, I was born in California, which this makes me a mongrel and also like an outlander because California was like the newest place in the world for white people. I mean, and the white people had eliminated a lot of the browner people, and there weren't very many black people there. So whatever the culture was, it wasn't like as established as anywhere else. So I grew up without a lot, I mean, there were little replicas. I grew up going to a Episcopalian church, but my mom and dad didn't go with us. They just dropped us off at the church because they thought it would be a good idea for us to have some culture. So my mom was always she got disowned by her wealthy father, not disowned, but her brother took over the money because my father was the son of a Eugene Debs socialist. And basically, although he'd gone to Stanford and he'd gotten a medical degree, he was still the son of a Eugene Debs socialist. And this was a man who was a financier, and I think he was in charge of cutting down forests. I mean, arranging for all the newspapers in the world to get forest wood to make newspapers with. So that was that opposite. So that thing I'm talking about in terms of love, right? I mean, he probably, I'm sure, felt that she would, go to hell or something like that. In not I doubt whether he particularly believed in a Christian hell, but so she was guilty because her brother kind of helped her out financially. And that guilt played through. So I realized it was my mother's guilt one time when my children were walking out of the house with holes in their socks. Many years later, 35 years later, and I said, "You can't go to school with holes in your socks. Why didn't you tell me you needed new socks?" And they said, "Well, you told us we had to take these through the whole year. It was the end of winter." And they thought the whole year was like from September to June. So, I mean, it's just so many things like that happen to all of us in terms of little things that we learned unconsciously and didn't remember happening, and then they just unfold. It was amazing. Anyway, my mother, I feel, was one of the nicest people I ever knew. But I didn't know she was the nicest person I ever knew until she was gone. And then there weren't any other people who were as nice as she was. You know, she didn't have a bad temper. She could put up with my father, who was kind of difficult. She could put up with me, who was loud and insisted on tons of attention. Look at me, I'm still doing it. I mean, Latifah talked me into it, but I love it.
Asha, what were some of the ways that, like, what are some of the things that your mom did that you felt loved by her? Like, felt loved?
Nothing. Nothing much. So I didn't do much either, and my children insist that I loved them.
Yeah.
So it was, I mean, neither of us were very, very good at doing all the things super moms do. I mean, we recognize birthdays like that, but I don't think she did anything. She kept Coca-Colas in the refrigerator. I mean, just dumb stuff that I don't think is important at all in terms of her. I guess I still don't. I felt she, one of the things that I didn't do with my children, and she didn't do as much as I would have had her do if I'd known, if I'd able to direct her. So I didn't roll around on the floor and wrestle with my children and giggle and carry on and be silly. I do miss that, you know. I mean, there's a kind of joy that I think that I didn't know how to experience very well. I was kind of serious. I identified with Eeyore, and my mom did too. Although she did love giraffes. She was funny though.
Did she roll around and wrestle with you?
No,
Oh,
I remember once I attacked her and kissed her all over, and that was fun. But she was well. She had grown up in a very stiff environment. I mean, a lot of money and a lot of formality and tons of rules.
yeah.
Tons of rules. And then her mother broke all of them. She got in a train and followed her doctor to, to California. And then she had to go visit her father, I mean, on a train by herself when she was 9. She did. Yeah. Then she was embarrassed because she hadn't gone to college. And then she went to junior college, and then she started writing plays, and she wrote a novel. And when she graduated, for instance, I didn't realize what it meant to her. So I didn't fly down for her graduation, or fly from New Mexico or wherever I was. I said, "Oh, Mom, that's great. What's better?" Something like that. So
Well, I thought what we would do now is go back to that picture of the second day of your retreat, Asha, unless there's anything else you want to say about your mother first.
no, but it's nice to think about her.
Yeah. And I'm going to share the picture. And this is out of the retreat book. You won't be able to see it at first, and then I'm going to zoom in. Hang on one second. I'm going to move a few things around. So this was the second day that you were in retreat, and every day you made some kind of drawing. Is that correct, Asha?
I made a drawing like this, and then I would make a watercolor. The
Okay.
watercolors are actually more pretty
Yeah.
than they are.
Okay.
But they
So
didn't.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, nothing. They just reflected how I felt when I took an hour and a half a day to make art. This in the watercolors.
So I'm going to zoom in. So if anybody is easily seasick, you might want to close your eyes for a moment. I'm going to zoom us in up here. So we started here last month. We heard some stories. We heard about Asha saving a man's life when she was a lifeguard and some other interesting things. And now it looks like we're at Stanford. And you have a bunch of names under Stanford. And I can't see what this word is up here in parentheses. I can't tell what that is.
I was
TR.
in love with a guy from Norway, Trygve.
Oh, oh.
Oh, yeah.
That's a nice smile. Tell us about that.
He was just nice. He was really nice. It was the kind of thing, where when he asked me out, I turned all the way down the sidewalk. I couldn't hold myself in. I was so excited that I was going out with him. And the whole year that he was there, it was like that. Just smitten.
Did you meet him in Stanford?
Yeah, he was there on a fellowship.
And then it looks like there's a bunch of names. Annie Spiegelberg, Yosemite.
No, Annie was my best friend. Spiegelberg was a teacher who talked about ghost traps.
Okay, wait. So let's start with Annie. Tell us about Annie. Anything?
Annie was outside of the girls' school. I mean, she went to the girls' school I went to, but she
Which was pretty elite.
very elite.
Mm-hmm.
And she was outside of that. And it wasn't the people who were at the school, and the whole school, which is still that way, is protected by this layer of money that is unbelievable. And that basically, I mean, I don't understand it exactly because people have, I think maybe they've gotten more liberal, perhaps because basically it's just PC to be more liberal now, but it was conservative and prejudiced and closed-minded and not interesting and not intelligent. Her father was a jazz pianist on the side, and so we went and heard jazz a lot. And she was really interested in intellectual people and pulled me into the world of the intellect in a way that I hadn't been before. And she was just a dear heart. I think she married 3 times, and she was, you know, she was most interested in and very female. My father always felt she was too feminine. That was just, she was dangerous because she was so feminine. I didn't at the time know what that meant because I, on the other hand, well, I'm thinking of calling me a she, they, because I think everybody who's a crone is more of a they than a she. And I realized that the they can be a single pronoun. If you lose, this woman named Kaya said it in a class that the older people in the Rouhaniat had to go to, the leaders had to go to because we were so dumb about it. And she pointed out that they was androgynous in the sense that basically it wasn't choosing a being a sex. And as I've always been trying to, as every spiritual teaching has said, it's important to bring the not be a woman or a man in that, but to bring all the factors of your being into one soul and live from that soul. So I thought, well, maybe they is good. And I could, if I put she, they, then all the people who wanted to be accepted for all their weird ideas, that they would know I accepted them. So, so like you do, see, you say she, her, but I haven't put it down yet because I haven't decided whether I want to do it on every Zoom that I do. Because I want people who I want to talk about those things, not to think that I have a position, because I think it's sometimes cleverer to be mysterious.
So Spiegelberg, Yosemite, Kathy, a couple of bills.
Spiegelberg made Ghost Trap, knew something about Tibet. There was very little about Asia or Africa. There was nothing about Africa. I majored in international relations and I minored in art because I knew I'd be into both of them. I mean, I knew that I wouldn't be into politics really primarily, and I would be into literature, which I probably should have done, but I knew more about the world, so I was really interested in it. So I was trying to find out about the rest of the world. But Stanford, although it was considered an Ivy League, the Ivy League college of the West, didn't have diddly. To study about Africa, I said, I want to, well, I'm studying international relations. I have to know about Africa. And so they found me, my advisor found me one librarian who wasn't even a teacher who had been to Nigeria, and she had 2 pamphlets on the Yoruba tribes who were revolting, and I got those and I got an A. I just had to read those. She didn't even ask me any questions. She just gave me an A. And Yosemite.
Wait, somebody wants to know, was it Art Spielberg? Do you know? Was his first name Art?
I don't think so. He wrote a lot of books about.
Okay.
I mean, he was an Asian. I don't know. He was a lot older than me. He was 40 or 50 then, so he would be well dead by now.
Okay. And you were going to say something
But it
about
could be. I
yourself.
don't remember his first name.
We can Google it.
Dr. Spiegelberg, I think he was called. He had a PhD. And Yosemite was a guy who took me up in the mountains and taught me about lichen, the magic of lichen. Is what was first breaking down the rocks that had come out of the wonder. And Kathy was a person who later, like Annie, saw in me an intellect and really wanted to connect with it and then help me because she was older than me. And she knew a lot of kind of outlander kind of people. By this time, I was very involved with the international students who were also a lot more interesting than my fellow students in my classes, you know.
And then the Bills, Bill Jones and Bill.
I don't know. I learned something about love from those two men, I think. And then Richard Alpert, of course, I became a lifetime friend. And
yeah, and I think I want to push the pause button on Richard Alpert
okay.
because I think I'm looking at the time and I'd like to spend maybe 10 or 15 minutes opening it up for questions. I know we're running over.
Okay.
And I think there's a lot to talk about with Richard Alpert.
Okay.
So if that's okay with you, we'll push the pause button there and come back to that, begin with that next time. I see that somebody, Kate, thank you, is,
Fred, she said something about Fred Spiegelberg.
yeah,
I'm not
wow.
sure that's the same one. It could have been him. It could have been him.
Okay.
Yeah, I studied about, he was just fascinated by the ghost trap. So that's what he talked about most of the time during all the classes I had with him.
Is the ghost trap Tibetan?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know that. I'll have to look it up.
They make these great stringed compositions. There was a time when grammar school children in this country were what's that word you use when you take another person's culture?
Cultural appropriation.
Yeah, I mean there was a lot of that with the ghost traps because they were so fun to make.
Okay. Okay, so now let's open it up for questions. And I see Tanya asked a question. She said, hi, Asha. She says, we live across the street from Stanford. What was your favorite spot on campus?
Wow. Wow. I don't know. I can just talk about the campus in the sense that basically, oh, well, of course, the student union, which I don't know whether it's the same, it's really funky and it had these booths. I love booths. And then the quad was so interesting at the quad. If you start if you start a tune in one part of the quad, you'd hear it going all afternoon, all over the quad. You know, I mean, there was some great acoustics there. And then there are those green hills that are in the hills towards the ocean at Stanford that are unbelievably green in the spring, almost so green that you want to vomit when you look at them, you know, because it's so rich. I mean, really, you know, big areas of green, green, green. Is that my Tanya? Yes, it is. Hi.
Yes.
Both of you. That's you. Wow.
Tanya is a fellow tea student. I don't know, maybe you're a teacher as well, a sensei. Yeah, Japanese tea. Yeah.
Better than me.
And I remember you used to make incredible things when you lived here, sweets and all kinds of amazing things. Yeah. Okay, so questions about anything we're talking about. It looks like Bryn has a question about feelings and suffering. Bryn, do you want to chat it or do you want to ask Asha directly?
I thought I would say it out loud.
Sure.
Good. Can we see you?
Oh,
I'm here.
there you are. Hi.
Hi, I'm walking in the sunshine. So I think it was last month, but everything blurs together. But Asha, you were talking about how, you know, feeling the spark of empathy or care when someone else or, you know, another creature is suffering is good, is sweet. And then, but it doesn't help to then just get in there and suffer. Like that doesn't help. And so I've been thinking about that a lot because I've noticed in myself I'll use an example. I do this thing where, like, say I'm on Facebook and I see creatures really get me. So I see, this is a real thing that happened the other week. A baby goat was abandoned outside and was outside in freezing temperatures and was rescued but didn't make it. So it's so sweet that people on the internet and in real life are working to save baby goats. I love it, makes me smile. But I do this thing where as soon as I find out about that, I feel the spark of like, okay, I have a heart, I care. And then I project myself into the experience of the baby goat like I'm supposed to. And I look around and think, it's cold, I'm a baby goat. This must be so, so sad and scary. And it really, really gets me into a spiral. And so I know, I understand that we probably don't want to be doing that because it's not helpful. But I'm kind of curious, like, what's the line? What I'm trying to work with is, what's the line between feeling the care and sending some love and then getting sucked all the way in? It's not turning out to be as simple as I thought it might be.
No, it's not simple at all, because basically, here's the line. The line is where you get kind of carried away with your feeling rather than the fact. That basically what happens is it's like people who, when somebody loses a beloved, a husband or a child or a parent, and then people will come to them and, when that happens, you have to live your life, right? And there are times when you have to just do things, right? And so that the emotional world for you in those situations is called grief, right? So a person who's in grief is going like this. Sometimes they're fine, sometimes suddenly they sink, and sometimes they're scared. But there's no rhyme or reason to when that happens and why it's triggered. But people come up and then they fall into the person's arms or hold a person and they start crying. And and then the person who's already grieving is forced into grieving for this person who's feeling all those feelings. That's the kind of the worst example of what it is. I mean, it's not necessary. We know that the person who's feeling all those feelings wants to cry, but I think some people like it when they do cry with them. But I've heard a lot of people that I know complain about it because they don't want to be brought into the torment of not having their husband anymore or having lost their child. So I think that basically you have to look at whether it's your ego that's just feeling, oh, I feel so deeply and I'm so wonderful, as opposed to being like, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do to help? And a lot of times laughing, or taking it lightly. Or if you're with a child, and children do this. Children are always going to respond that way to death until you get used to the fact that death is just a fact. There's some kind of loss in it because children fall in love with animals like they fall in love with people. And we do too. Humans do also. But I think that adding suffering to the world and making it bigger than it is, because we don't know that death is so bad. I think it's not bad at all, actually. The bad thing about it is not for the people who are being left. The bad part about it is that the person dying has to say goodbye to everybody they know, right? You're not just saying goodbye to one person, you're saying goodbye to everybody. That's a big loss if you love them. So I think that basically, and when people are sick too, like a lot of times they just want, something more kind of joyous. I just watched a Chinese picture about that old lady who was dying and the Chinese family. I don't know what
yeah.
but I was so surprised at what the ending of that movie was. Do you remember what the name of it was, Meg? No. It was a great teaching. I'm finding movies that are good teachings now that I really like, that sometimes shift my head around in a very positive way. So I think that basically you just have to find your own truth about that. And basically it's hurt. I mean, it hurts when you lose somebody, and it hurts when somebody's in pain. There's no question about it. Or if you even if you pass an automobile accident and there are ambulances, that it hurts. So sometimes I just say nayaz, or I do different things. I mean, there are plenty of things to do. Yashafi, kafi, and basically trying to save baby goats. But the animal world, I'm not sure that the animal world adds the frontal cortex to their suffering. I mean, we have stories in our frontal cortex, and the stories are not always helpful. Often they're not. I think, I think that our thinking is not always very helpful for us, because it takes us into the past or the future in a way that's maybe not so appropriate. Oh, I'm so afraid that I'm going to feel this way the rest of my life. I bet everybody here has felt that, when you have a bad pain and it just feels like this is forever. I'm going to have to, or you have an ache somewhere and you think, oh God, I've got cancer and I'm going to die. I mean, all of that. And so what you want to just do, I suppose, is pause. And I think basically to be conscious of what you're doing. If it's public, you can do anything you want. If it's private, then you just have to follow your soul's demands. And if you don't have contact with your soul, I suggest you sit a bit every day, as much as you can bear to, until you start enjoying it. There is a point after you sit for as long as you can bear to, for a long time, that you like sitting. That suddenly you're in this world that's just extremely pleasant, and that you're guaranteed it every day because you've set it into your life. Is there anybody
Thank you, Bryn.
who agrees?
Thank you.
Beautiful question.
Yeah.
The name of the movie is The Farewell, of the Chinese grandmother who was dying. And I'm seeing we're almost at a quarter after, and I'm thinking it might be time to wrap it up. Anwar, I see that you have a question. It's a great teaser question, because it's about the Lama era of Asha's life. So if you would be willing to, Anwar, re-ask that question when we get to the Lama part of the timeline. It's about the book Seed. So Anwar, if you'd be willing to do that, that would be great. I'd appreciate it. Asha, is there anything else you want to say to anyone or everyone before we close out?
Well, I'm doing a thing I'm participating in a thing that Lama's putting on for Ram Dass about Ram Dass on Saturday evening. If you're interested in it, it's the guy. There's a book that he's written that I'm finding fascinating. Of course, I knew him pretty well, but I thought it was fascinating anyway.
What was it?
It's called On Being Ram Dass.
Oh.
And he and a friend of his who was with Neiman Karoli Baba also kind of wrote it together. I mean, I saw them together in Hawaii. But at any rate, we're doing an interview and having their memories of Ram Dass coming up, and Mirabai Star will be reading, and so Rameshwar Das. So you might like it. You can look it up on the Lama site.
I think it's lamafoundation.org is the site.
They made a new site that is kind of their digital offerings, and that's the URL that I shared. But I think they both will probably lead to the same place.
Oh, thank you.
And I'm pretty
Together.
sure Lama Together. I'm pretty sure it starts at 4 Pacific on Saturday. At least that's what I have in my calendar.
Great.
Yes, because
Thanks,
it's 7. I'm due right here.
Due in your chair. Well, I'm feeling like it's time to wrap it up. Thank you, everybody, for your patience. And it was an interesting, for me, it was so unexpected and such a good practice to be with what's arising, even as it's unpleasant. That's really, I think, a great practice, is being with what's unpleasant and not having the power or the capacity to change anything. We just get to be with it. So I appreciate you being here. And if you hear from anybody who was in and couldn't get back in, please extend my sincere apologies. I tried to reach out to as many people as I could, and let everybody know. And you'll receive an email too, that we'll do it the same bat time, same bat channel next month, which I think is also March 9th. And I will do something different around security. So stay tuned for that too. And if anybody has any ideas about that, I appreciate it. I got a few
Whatever you
messages.
learn, you can pass on too. That
Yeah.
was really
Okay.
exciting.
Yeah.
Okay, guys.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
It's all about impermanence.
It
Yeah.
is.
Thank you, Amira. Yes.